My marriage looked perfect from the outside. We had been together long enough for people to admire our stability, the way we managed responsibilities, and the calmness that seemed to define our home. But what others never saw was the silence that had slowly built between us, the way small moments of affection disappeared, and how conversations turned into brief exchanges about bills, errands, or obligations. My husband wasn't cruel, and he wasn't unloving, but over time he stopped noticing me in the way a partner should. I became a fixture in his world rather than a priority, and the distance grew without either of us acknowledging it out loud. Nights in bed were predictable, mornings were rushed, and the spark that once made me feel alive was buried beneath routine. I didn't plan to feel restless. It crept in quietly, like a shadow I couldn't shake. I caught myself craving eye contact that lingered, laughter that felt spontaneous, or even just a compliment that wasn't about how well I managed the house. The ache for attention gnawed at me until I started questioning what was wrong with me for wanting more. I reminded myself constantly that I had a good man who provided, who didn't stray, who trusted me. Yet the more I told myself that should be enough, the more it became clear it wasn't. I wanted to feel seen, wanted, chosen again. That restlessness stayed hidden until the night everything shifted. We had been invited out, and I told myself it would be just another evening of polite conversation and polite smiles. I was wrong. That night, I noticed two men who instantly disrupted the dull rhythm I had been living in. They weren't extraordinary in a way that would stop the world, but to me, in that moment, they were magnetic. The way one carried himself with effortless confidence drew eyes without him even trying. The other had a quieter presence, but it was intense, as though he was capable of seeing more than people wanted to reveal. I tried to shake it off, tried to remind myself my husband was right there, but something had already stirred inside me. I remember thinking how dangerous it felt to be curious about strangers while standing beside the man I promised forever to. Still, I couldn't look away, and in that single moment of weakness, I realized something was about to change. They entered my world like they had always belonged there. I noticed immediately how different they were from one another, yet somehow they balanced each other in a way that drew me in without effort. One spoke with boldness, his charm flowing as naturally as his laughter, every word confident, playful, meant to entertain and capture attention. He knew the effect he had on people and seemed to enjoy it, but instead of finding it arrogant, I found myself strangely captivated. The other man was his opposite, speaking less but watching more, every glance deliberate, as if he weighed the meaning of silence more than words. There was something steady in him that felt even more dangerous because it made me want his approval without understanding why. I could feel their energy pulling me closer, though I said nothing that revealed it. My husband, seated nearby, trusted me without question. He was comfortable, unaware of the invisible tension building right under his nose. He laughed at jokes, raised his glass, and engaged in conversation, never suspecting that while his world stayed the same, mine was already starting to shift. He didn't see the way my attention drifted, how my eyes followed gestures that weren't his, or how my smile lingered just a little longer when directed at someone else. The space between us grew more fragile with every moment. When one of them leaned in to speak, I felt the warmth of his breath against my ear, subtle enough that no one else noticed but undeniable to me. I should have recoiled, but instead my pulse quickened, betraying the calm expression I tried to maintain. A brush of a hand here, a glance that held longer than it should have, and suddenly the air was charged with something unspoken but undeniable. It was reckless, and I knew it, yet the thrill coursed through me in a way I hadn't felt in years. The laughter I shared with them was different, alive, as if they were pulling a version of me into existence that my husband had forgotten long ago. Every word carried double meaning, every casual touch felt intentional, and I let it happen. I didn't stop it, because deep down I didn't want to. The line between harmless and dangerous blurred so quickly that I could barely tell when it vanished. All I knew was that the moment his hand brushed against mine, I felt something snap inside me, and I didn't pull away. The shift from playful tension to something undeniable happened faster than I could prepare for. What began as laughter and teasing grew into something heavier, as though every glance carried weight and every gesture dared me to acknowledge the truth of what was happening. My husband was there, close enough to speak to me, yet somehow far enough that he didn't see the way my world tilted. His trust became the very cover under which I allowed myself to step closer to temptation. One of them let his fingers linger just a little too long when he passed me something, and instead of correcting it, I accepted it as though it were natural. The other caught my eyes in that exact moment, as if silently daring me to admit that this was no accident. Their attention collided with mine in a way that made me feel cornered and desired all at once. I knew I was crossing a line, but the rush of knowing my husband was just steps away made it impossible to stop. The air grew thick with suggestion. A whisper close to my ear, a touch against the curve of my back, and laughter that hid the danger from everyone else. It was all too much, yet I leaned into it. My heart pounded against my ribs, not from fear of being caught but from the thrill of it, the intoxicating danger of betrayal unfolding in plain sight. I told myself I could pull away at any second, but each time the chance came, I chose to stay. I could hear my husband's voice in the background, steady, unaware, and it only sharpened the edge of what I was doing. With every stolen glance, every touch that lingered longer than it should, I betrayed the man who trusted me most. The knowledge of it both sickened and excited me. It wasn't just about attention anymore, it was about the undeniable reality that I was letting myself be taken by something forbidden. The moment that sealed it came when his hand brushed against my skin in a way that could no longer be mistaken for accident. I didn't resist. I let it happen, fully aware of where I was, who was watching, and what it meant. In that instant, I knew I had crossed into a place where there was no return, and for the first time in years, I felt completely alive. When the night finally ended, nothing felt the same. My husband walked beside me as though everything was untouched, his trust still intact, his world still secure. He didn't ask questions, didn't search my eyes for answers, and that silence weighed heavier than any confrontation could have. The guilt pressed into me like a second skin, but beneath it was an undeniable truth. I didn't regret the thrill, I regretted the secret. Lying awake later, I replayed every moment in my head. The subtle touches, the looks that lingered, the choice not to pull away. I could still feel their presence as if the air carried the imprint of what had happened. It terrified me how easily I let myself fall, how quickly loyalty crumbled when temptation knocked. I kept telling myself it had only been moments, small gestures, nothing that could not be excused, but I knew better. In my heart, I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. My husband's steady breathing beside me reminded me of the life we had built together, a life now tainted by something he didn't even know existed. That made the betrayal worse, because his ignorance gave me no escape, no excuse, just the burden of knowing I was not the person he believed me to be. And yet, underneath the shame, I still felt a dangerous spark, the memory of being wanted, noticed, alive in a way I had long forgotten. That contradiction hollowed me out. I asked myself over and over whether it was worth it, whether fleeting moments of validation justified the cracks I had carved into my marriage. The answer never came clean. Desire had spoken louder than reason, and once I let it in, it refused to leave quietly. I wanted to confess, to relieve myself of the weight, but I knew the truth would destroy him. So I chose silence, carrying both guilt and secret satisfaction. 2 men had stepped into my life and, in one night, altered everything I thought I knew about myself and my marriage. What happened may have been brief, but its shadow stretched long, and I could already feel the distance widening between who I was before and who I had become after. That night didn't just change my marriage, it changed me.